I do think the AI trade is fantastic right now. It's something you have to be in. We had a wonderful, wonderful earnings season, the best since 2021, and a lot of it
blew my expectations away.
Yeah, same here. You normally see that coming out of recessions. I think that's a great statement.
And we're doing it at a market top.
That's very true, but valuations still seem attractive. Yeah. Nvidia looks attractive. It really does.
Dell went up 30% on one day, and it got cheaper at the same time. It had a forward P of something like in the teens. Anyway.
Exactly. Well, because we keep innovating. So we're moving from agentic AI. There's still this need for compute, and that's consistent. I think the need for compute just got bigger today with SpaceX launching.
Sure.
And we're going to get more transparency now that we can go through all the lovely earnings reports and calls. And now we actually saw a shift to the consumer. So consumer AI, I think, is kind of the next wave. Nvidia is now making chips for those computers, like you said, with Dell.
Yeah,
and those
AI in your pocket.
AI in your pocket. There are even, I know of some companies that are making laptops where AI just stays on that. It's not collected to the internet whatsoever. And so certain use cases that are required for security, for example. So the point is the AI trade is very much intact because it's still innovating.
Every company becoming a space company, they just don't know it yet. And the irony of this story is that every investor will become a SpaceX investor, at least on the NASDAQ.
Sure.
And they didn't realize that either. So it's becoming ubiquitous. And now I think more of the public is starting to understand the story of this value creation beyond Starlink.
Yeah, so we're all going to be space traders. I can accept that. In fact, I think it's happening already, and that is the future. But it's always a question about timing here. You mentioned that you're an early investor, and you mentioned that you're buying more today. Are you price sensitive here? What's behind? Are you just going to buy as much as you can get? What's your strategy here, and what's your end goal with owning all these SpaceX shares?
Yeah, it's interesting because typically with an IPO this exciting, the philosophy is, oh, you just wait until it settles down and then you put your money in. But I think in this case, the ownership at this point is important to have that skin in the game now as the growth story begins. They have the data center plan. They have Starlink operational. As we look at the A1 satellites that they're building that are going to be individual data centers that will mesh in the future, you have to think about the compounding capability that each of these launches is going to have, just as Starlink is compounded with now over 10,000 satellites. So an individual data center is the size of a swimming pool. The PEZ dispenser that they've designed for Starship has been tested for deploying those specifically. And Starship has done, of course, many practice launches,
sure.
Getting more acceleration in the capability with each one. But you've got the goal of Starship being fully packed with SpaceX data centers in the next 12 to 18 months. So that story is becoming reality.
I think the Crusoe news, a one-off, kind of spooked people. Any sign of a slowdown in spending?
We're not seeing anything like that. I can tell you, we just had a record start to the year, records in our enterprise category, signed the largest lease in the history of the company, a 200 megawatt AI inference lease to a AA rated customer, household name. That demand's been continuing into the second quarter. Our development pipeline is up 60% in 90 days at the first quarter. So we're still seeing this demand is tremendously robust and diverse.
Yeah, and I was reading a report from KeyBank about it, and it's basically said, kind of echoed what you were talking about, and they have different sizes, 200 megawatts, 500 over gigawatts, and that you still have power up for lease, and at least this analyst believes you will likely sign those leases in quarters and months to come.
We are building right now 1.2 gigawatts. That's $16.5 billion that dramatically increased from the end of last year. The total portfolio is 3 gigawatts, but we have runway to get this thing to 9 gigawatts over time. So we see a really large runway for our customers to grow on our platform.
You know, back in the 70s, there was a song, before you were born, Andy, it was a song called I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool, or something like this. And I was thinking, you guys were data centers before data centers were cool. You guys have been doing this for a long, long time. But there's a lot of new participants in this space. So how do you stand out against them? How do you compete against them? Because I'm sure there's a lot of price pressure out there.
So a few things. We've been, as a business, for over 2 decades, solely focused on building, owning, operating data centers in major metropolitan areas. We pride ourselves in a reputation, under promise, over deliver, operational excellence, and you're seeing, they call it the wheat being separated from the chaff here when times are getting tough and we're scaling this infrastructure so quickly. But right now, the demand is well outpacing supply in our core markets. So even our value add, we're just seeing rates for our capacity rise quicker and quicker and be more sought after.
Yeah, 20-year overnight success, Andy. Congratulations. A lot of public, I don't need to tell you this, a lot of high-level public pushback against, not you, but data centers in general. So electricity use, water use. What's your case? What's your response to that?
So I hear that, and I think that some of the myths need to be dispelled on that, quite frankly. First off, these are mission-critical applications, what we're serving. Digital transformation, the cloud computing, the early days of AI, how you buy your coffee, stream your video, healthcare, research. It's critical. When everyone says, I don't want a data center, my data's in the cloud, well, that cloud is inside Digital Realty's 4 walls. You need it.
You're what's running that.
Exactly. We're the foundational physical infrastructure for the cloud. 2, our customers are absorbing the cost of the power. They've been on national media saying we want to pay them more than their fair share. We strengthen the grids for our communities. The water one's probably my favorite one. So Digital Realty, 300+ data centers across 55 metropolitan areas. We use less water than 18 California golf courses. There's 15,000 golf courses just in the United States, and that's less than half in the world.
Is that misconception because people don't realize that most of these are on what they call a closed-loop water system?
Closed-loop.
Where it's kind of like a pool. The water's just there. You know, some may splash out, and you got to put a little bit back in. But overall, you're just using the same water over and over again?
It's like a pool, except cover it up so it doesn't evaporate into the air.
Yeah, but it's the same water.
Correct.
You're not just consuming the Colorado River.
Sometimes some of our sites, the water is going more towards irrigation of the exterior of the building than the actual physical infrastructure.
Wow.
So a lot of this is called facts are not getting in the way of a good story, and we need to make sure our story at Digital Realty and the data center industry is out there for the broader public.
We got the debut of SpaceX today. Went off really well. I think everybody's saying it's kind of priced to perfection. You're seeing the stock move up more than 20% higher. The market's also in the green, getting some help from the potential ceasefire at least in a small part. What do you think this means for market sentiment in general, not only today, but going forward?
Right. Well, I mean, I think it clearly speaks to the positive market sentiment, to investors' excitement about dreams about innovation, technology, the future, Elon Musk in particular, and his vision. So I think that's all very positive. And I think really from here, the question is going to be, as the SpaceX headlines fade, even if the IPO continues to be very successful, what do investors focus on next? And I'm guessing that they're going to really be focused on AI. And so I think that the debate around the future of AI is probably going to determine the trajectory of the market, again, assuming that the ceasefire remains on track.
Okay. I just took a look at the charts since the S1 was filed by SpaceX. If you look at some of the big AI names like a Palantir, it's down more than 5%. I'm looking at the Mag 7 in general. They're down more than 5.5%. In your opinion, did money come from those names to go to SpaceX, or are they down for other reasons?
I think they're actually down for other reasons. Yes. So in the software space, I think there's continues to be this question of the LLMs versus the software providers. Certainly you're speaking about one of the most innovative and leading software providers, but there have been discussions over the past month or two about whether the LLMs can carry out some of their tasks. Then when you talk about the large the large cloud providers, there's really a question about CapEx. Like, is that CapEx going to generate a real return on investment? So investors are preferring to invest in the companies that are benefiting from that CapEx, those earnings that are here today, rather than a more questionable return later on.
All right. Important to note, this is also unprofitable tech. SpaceX is not profitable. The Starlink business is great, but other parts of the business are kind of losing money, sucking money away from that. At the same time, the valuation estimated is about 100 times forward earnings. The fact that investors are willing to put their money in this, at least today, I know it's the first day.
Yes.
What does that signal about risk longer term and the idea of non-profitable tech maybe being back in vogue?
Well, I think it's certainly in vogue now. Definitely in vogue now. And the results of this company, that whether they're going to be able to grow into the valuation are so far out, it's really easy to have dreams. And so I think the question is going to be for other less profitable tech, and potentially IPOs coming out this year, if they are expected to generate returns sooner, are they able to show a really clear trajectory to that? Because if they're not, I think that they might stumble, even if the SpaceX IPO does well. I
don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying in SpaceX, there's priced in a lot of hopes and dreams. So maybe the money for the hopes and dreams of SpaceX have to come from somewhere else. Is that what you're saying? Other hopes and dreams plays.
I think it's a question of how much people continue to find targets for hopes and dreams that can deliver like Elon Musk. Elon is better at delivering on hopes and dreams than anyone else out there, and other companies might be held to a higher standard in the near term.
A lot of hopes and dreams out there, though. There's a lot of hopes and dreams out there.
Absolutely.
A lot of people also saying that this big IPO, it could potentially mark maybe a top in this market. JP Morgan out with a note, Kriti Gupta and Abigail Yoder, really interesting stuff here. They say the 25 largest IPOs in history have often accompanied market trends, and 2/3 of them, after their debut, market up 5 to 20%. Is this is the potential at least for a similar situation to play out here?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of factors that are signaling that the market might be near a top. But usually a market top only happens once you start to have a draw of liquidity, right? Interest rates go higher, or you need to have, or leverage is too high, and you have to pay off debt, or taxes come due. So right now, interest rates might be peaking if the war is going to be resolved in Iran. From a leverage standpoint, you don't see any mountains of debt coming due anytime soon to derail this. And then from a liquidity factor, I think it's just a question of how many people are looking at these at the runs they've had and just want to lock in gains because it's been so much so soon, and or they have been at these companies and they need to pay taxes on their shares as they come to fruition. So those are those factors, I think, along with, again, potential fundamental questions about AI and token maxing and models like DeepSeek coming out at much lower prices. I think that those dynamics might play more of a role in like whether this is a market top. But it's really, you can see that the market is ebullient. You can see that valuations are very high, but knowing when it peaks is much harder. But those are the factors that I would be looking at. And, if those factors do come into fruition, I think you might start to see a rotation into kind of more stable businesses that are less expensive, maybe inflation protected, maybe in the REIT space. I think also, oil field services, if you notice, like global oil field services has actually held up really well, even with the price of oil going down, because you're going to have to rebuild the Middle East. So areas like those, I think you might just start to see money flow into for people to lock in at least some of the gains. But are those enough to derail these stocks? I don't know. I don't know if any of us know.
Josh, obviously SpaceX sucked up all the oxygen and the trading talk this week, but other stuff was going on in the markets as well.
Yeah, Jack, SpaceX, it felt like before Friday took up all the energy, and then certainly on Friday, I know we were all watching that tape very closely, closed up about 20%. But the thing with SpaceX, it can't really move the whole market. There's plenty of other things happening that move the rest of the stocks in the indexes right now, and it was an interesting week for that. So you got bad inflation data that maybe spooked investors a little bit, but not quite, because you turn around to Thursday, and President Trump once again talking about this Iran war coming to an end soon, and what you saw is another move lower in oil. You take a look at WTI closing below $85 this week. That's its lowest level in 2 months. It's down over 20% since its May high. So I think lower oil starting to drive a little bit of a rotation in this market too. So with the war perhaps coming to an end, lower oil, you think about some of the economically cyclical sectors within the S&P 500. You take a look at something like financials. You take a look at even staples, some of the consumer areas, and then also real estate. Those areas have started to catch a bid as investors are moving a little bit out of tech stocks.
We've been talking about the rotation, I feel like, for years, whether it's cyclical or into value, and then the value index has beaten growth this year so far. But then it always feels like a head fake. Well, what do you think? Is this for real? I guess it depends partly on oil.
Hey, Jack, I get why you might laugh me off the set if I tell you there's going to be a rotation. I think I wrote that story at the beginning of 2024, 2025, and 2026. But I think what you're starting to see at this point is at least other reasons to believe in the rotation. Maybe it won't outperform tech. I can't tell you that SanDisk stock isn't going to go up another 200%, because it certainly might. We all keep thinking it won't, and then it continues to do that. But I think in an area like financials is interesting. When you start thinking about that SpaceX IPO, the growth in the IPO market, you have other companies potentially coming public, and a strong economy. That's a reason to be interested in financials, and you saw that on Friday with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley stocks rallying.
And $500 million in fees didn't hurt either.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk more about SpaceX, Jacob. Largest IPO ever, largest hype ever, and yet it went off kind of orderly, almost in a boring way. It landed actually pretty much where Barron's predicted it would land.
It went up about 20% today. I mean, we've seen moves a lot bigger than that. In 2019, Airbnb's first day move was a more than twofold move. But SpaceX at over $1 trillion market cap went up 20%. Don't be disappointed in that. That's pretty good. But there's historical precedent for that type of first day move.
I do think that when we're talking about SpaceX, I'm very happy that my retirement funds are not quite as exposed as we were potentially going to be. Obviously, the S&P Dow Jones indices were kind of contemplating this idea that they were going to bend the rules a little bit. They were going to introduce some of these big IPOs a little bit earlier, a little less seasoned. They walked that back, thankfully, and so now we're going to have a little bit longer to test out some of these really big, massive ones. Obviously, the NASDAQ went a little bit of a different route, and they're actually going to be adding SpaceX to the NASDAQ 100 next month.
Yeah, and don't be surprised if at some point these stocks underperform badly. As our colleague Nate Wolf pointed out in an article, they tend to do that.
I think at this point, SpaceX to me will just sort of become a sentiment indicator of sorts, like how you use Tesla. You're looking for where the speculative trade is and where the money goes. But remember, it's an unprofitable company. I don't think it's going to be a great indicator for what happens with, say, Anthropic. There's reports that that is a profitable company. I think SpaceX is more of a sentiment indicator, and I wouldn't expect it to move with the market necessarily.
Yeah, or a meme stock. We'll say the world's largest meme stock. Let's move quickly. I do want to mention one fun SpaceX thing. Buzzing around Morgan Stanley, they believe that 100 billionaires were minted on Friday. The Times then reported that over 4,000 millionaires were minted. So a lot of money sloshing around. We'll see where that